To other news, you might remember that London's deadly Grenfell apartment fire stoked fears that a similar disaster could happen here in Australia. Concerns about cladding aren't new. In 2014, the Lacrosse apartment building in Melbourne went up in flames. England is now carrying out a national audit of some 600 buildings, but fire experts here say authorities are dragging their feet, with only a relatively small sample of buildings being tested. James Oaten reports that's forcing apartment residents to find their own solutions.
So today we're in Northcote having a look at some...
It's Sahil Basin's business to find dangers in buildings that the ordinary person wouldn't notice.
As you can see there, that is clearly not sealed.
Today he's showing us a new apartment building that residents have asked him to check out.
What this will allow, the penetration, is that the fire, if there was an engulfing fire here, to go straight through that penetration.
This building was signed off under Australia's national building codes, yet Sahil's found it's littered with problems.
So we've got another penetration there, which is taking fire from this area to the next.
But Sahil takes us to another building to show us something his company can't check, the cladding.
However, we don't know if this is combustible or if there's non-combustible material being used. So yeah, aluminium composite material can be a ticking time bomb if the wrong products are utilised, being combustible. So the least we could do is actually do an audit of all of our buildings to see which ones have got combustible material on them.
Horrific fires at Grenfell Tower in London this month, and in Melbourne at the Lacrosse apartment building 3 years ago, put pressure on authorities to uncover how many buildings are clad in unsafe combustible materials. Victoria's Building Authority responded to the Lacrosse fire by auditing 170 buildings in the inner city. It found over half had cladding that was non-compliant. Since then, they've audited several dozen more. So far, that's the best check that's been done on Australia's mushrooming residential construction. But experts say we shouldn't take much comfort from that audit.
It was only looking at ACP following the Lacrosse fire, which was the product that burned on Lacrosse. But what we've known, what we've found out in our research since, is that there's many products that, at some level, combustible, that are being used widely in the apartment market.
Numerous experts in the industry that we've spoken to say that the scope of the audit is simply far too narrow. Do you agree?
Our audit focused on the issue of compliant cladding. Now, if experts are saying that there are other issues that need to be looked at in terms of fire safety, then that's an ongoing issue that the Victorian Building Authority will deal with as issues come before it.
One building that wasn't picked up in the audit was an apartment block in the inner Melbourne suburb of Brunswick. 3 months ago, a faulty air conditioning unit sparked a blaze that quickly spread to the unit above.
You could see all of the external cladding. It was on fire and bits of it were starting to burn off, and then they subsequently fell down afterwards.
The building was evacuated. It was hours before residents were allowed back in.
I came back here and I saw here while the fire brigade were here, they'd already put it out. So I only got to see the next 6 hours as they managed the issues within the building.
The fire didn't rate a mention in the media, but 7:30 can reveal that investigators suspect combustible cladding, not suited for big apartment blocks, is to blame.
I think this is a case where a product that's commonly in use in a Class 1, your domestic homes, has been taken into the Class 2 apartment environment with little thought about what we need to do to assess whether this product is safe.
Fortunately, unlike Grenfell, this complex has a sprinkler system.
If it wasn't sprinkler protected, the fire would have been a lot greater.
The residents believe they can't rely on the building approval system to ensure their homes are safe. So they've taken matters into their own hands and hired a fire engineer.
A lot of people do need their concerns allayed, and the government needs to act to ensure that these apartments that have popped up everywhere, that they're all up to standard moving forward.
So how many apartments like this might there be out there in Melbourne or other capital cities?
Look, I think to answer that, the number's probably unknown. I'd be taking a pot shot to put a number to it. It could be hundreds, it could be thousands.
So how are dangerous materials finding their way into our homes? Around the country, building inspections have been outsourced to private surveyors or certifiers, but they aren't required to be on site to check building materials, like cladding, at the time they're installed. And once the building's finished, they can't know what's been used.
If there was an inspection of such, then the type of insulation could be identified, the type of cladding could be identified, but these inspections are not called for.
Sounds like a big gap in the system.
Oh, it's a massive gap in the system, and we believe that there should be more inspections. However, we don't believe that building surveyors should be the sole entities undertaking these inspections.
That is the exact issue that the national agenda or the building ministers are trying to tackle at the moment. How do you ensure that only a product that has the right certification can be used so that it's not reliant upon building surveyors to try and check that?
Isn't it the VBA's role to raise concerns when the system isn't working? And why hasn't this been done before?
Oh, it certainly has been done.
But experts think what has been done isn't enough. Governments around the country have been told about shoddy materials in the supply chain and the dangers of an outsourced permit system, and yet unsafe buildings are still being built.
There's been warnings for many years. We here at Engineers Australia have been calling out this issue for a long time. In 2013 we made it quite clear that we thought there needed to be reform in this exact process that I'm talking about, where we need to make sure that the certifiers are doing their jobs.
Engineers like homeowners, building consultants, surveyors and fire experts are calling the system broken. Policymakers are now scrambling to repair it.
This is not a Victorian issue. I want to make that very clear. This is a national issue.
The imperative of knowing that there is an impending disaster hasn't been there, so the governments, the bureaucrats, the processes that are in place just seem to tick along rather than having a sense of urgency about them.